All right, at this time.
Dr. Cup, you changed. You changed.
Yes. We'll call the meeting to order. At this time, we will begin with item number 3, public comment. Any citizens who desire to address the board with regard to matters on the agenda will be read or received at this time. No one? Okay. Is anyone signed up to provide verbal comments? No. At this time, we will close public comment and move on to item number 4, fact findings and recommendations. For item A, consideration of an action, on a recommendation for procedures and policies impacting animal shelter capacity to the Animal Services Division, and that is going to be presented by Don Spence. Animal Services.
Yes. And Dawn.
I'm like, which one?
Before you start, can I make a comment on just things that we've seen over the mail and respect to those cities and respect to this?
Yeah, as long as
Okay.
it's.
Yeah, it's definitely
yeah.
on this topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all saw the very disturbing report of the image of what, you know, when you're looking at that report, you see how many animals were coming in. That definitely showed that there needs to be procedure to limit what we're taking in, because you're just begging for disaster every time you get 130 cats in a month. I mean, there's got to be limitations. So I want, you know, with reading that, and I knew it was bad last year. I didn't know how bad it was. I was just like, this is really disturbing. But so I'm keeping a very open mind on what we need to do. I have suggestions, of course. I've been thinking about it all week, but I'll wait to do suggestions later. But I just want everyone to, because this has to happen some way or another. This has to be a vote.
And that's what you're gonna hear John say is, y'all asked us to bring back a recommendation. This is just a suggestion. We can change it. You can remove things. You can add things. This is a discussion for y'all to have to find what are you comfortable with to approve, so that we do have those limitations, so that we don't get to that point again. So absolutely, I'm glad y'all brought suggestions.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So in our previous meeting, staff presented a sample draft of a tiered triage approach as requested by board during the February meeting, and that's what we're going to go over today. Have some discussions, make some modifications, answer any questions that you may have. And we had a discussion on maintaining capacity. We went over our numbers, looked at some charts. We looked at the tiered approach and how we would approach that. And we'll go over a little bit more clarity in that as well. And board requested time to evaluate the sample draft. So we gave you last month to kind of have an opportunity to tour the shelter. Thank you to those who did. And an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have in regards to the plan for capacity that we're going to be going over as well in our tiered approach. So capacity is a regional issue. It's a state issue. It's nationwide here in the South. Capacity is an issue faced by almost all the southern states, regardless of the size. Even when you increase the space, there's still, it does not mean that there's no capacity concerns. They fill up they're at capacity. Where there's space, there will be animals. We had some examples from Fort Bend County with the plea, Rosenberg Animal Control and Shelter. The last month also Williamson County Regional Animal Shelter in Georgetown, and Austin Animal Care. So we kind of looked out there in social media and see where other people were or where they were standing or what was going on with their shelters as far as capacity. And we're seeing a clear trend, as we expected, that many places are reaching capacity or approaching that very quickly, especially here in the spring months when love is in the air and babies are being made. And so we have litters of kittens, litters of puppies, and things like that. And we've already started to see the same thing here in our shelter as well. So thresholds for decisions. And when we're talking about thresholds, we're talking about all the things we're going to be trying to do, every single avenue, every option, every decision on that particular decision tree to try to reach out and find places for these animals as best we can. The city has waived all adoption fees since the beginning of the pandemic, and that still continues at this particular time. We made transfers to other rescues a priority. When a rescue reaches out to us, we're going to find a way to say yes. We've had excellent assistance through RPM and other individual rescues for other animals, but as the springtime comes, that's going to dwindle as the number of requests increase based upon the number of animals, and also the time frame of the northern states, which will also have their animals available as well. Fostering opportunities advertised extensively. I'll go over some numbers with our foster program that we started this year or parts of last year, and it has started to grow. We're saving many lives through that avenue as well. And adoption efforts, social media, multiple adoption events, whenever we have staffing, volunteer participation, including our Saturday and Sunday PetSmart events. Every weekend, we always have animals available at PetSmart, dogs, and we always have cats available at PetSmart as often as we can. Sometimes they're adopted out so quick that they're empty, and then we try to build them right back up. And that's a great avenue as far as visibility that we're working with. I did have another PetSmart reach out to us wanting to also utilize our services to adopt cats from their shelter. So I'll be reaching out to them as well. So when we're saying we're going to exhaust every option, we're going to, and this is myself and my staff, not just me, we're going to reach out to everyone and everything and do as much as we can. Our pushes on social media, we've started to involve some really professional videography and just individual highlighting specific animals, special ones that need a little more visibility, our long-term residents, our seniors, those that just need a little medical need, our little babies, the cats, the kittens, anyone. Yes.
I'm loving on Facebook and other social media, they've been presenting, look at his ears and look at that smile and the different animals, instead of just putting a picture of them out there. They're telling a little bit about the personality, and I'm watching the shares. So that is new, and I think that's a very positive thing. So
Yes, thank you, thank you. I'm excited about it. I want it to be like a dating app for pets. So that would be great.
John, whoever, is there any way for those of us, if those may be the wrong term, it may just be, it's not on Facebook, to see what we're doing?
Absolutely, yes.
I don't ever see it. I'm not doing Facebook. So.
Yes, and I any suggestions on how we can get those out to you, even if it's just.
Unless we start Instagram.
Oh, okay.
I brought that up.
Writing that down.
That's a goal.
Instagram, because
We're also, so Donald touched a little bit there.
Just on the website.
We're gonna try and inject like a Facebook feed.
So what
Yeah,
that does,
but you don't have the Facebook.
No, it
You
just-
still can't do it.
no, you can see
Yeah.
it. So it would,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly,
All right.
yes. And Instagram is tied into Facebook, so that should be an easy walk to that path to get those things taken
Yeah,
care
you
of.
should be able just to take your Facebook post, because Facebook owns Instagram, so you should be able to take your Facebook post and click link to Instagram, and it goes right there.
Exactly. So we're gonna work through the technicalities as to how, because ours was created a certain way. And so we have to make sure that it translates over, but yes. you're absolutely right. And we're also working with Wolfgang Bakery as well. First weekend of every month. We still have adoption events with them as well, that we're also going out to. And we're also working with Sugarland Exchange Club. Yes, Sugarland Exchange Club made 2 donations for 2 of our puppies that we have here. Sizable donations because they wanted to present them after I made a presentation to them about the shelter to kind of get some more visibility. And it's also going to be for one of their scholarships or things that they do for their organization as well. So I was able to reach out to another community organization. So when we're talking thresholds for decisions, we're going to be doing every single possible thing that we're going to, that we can.
Oh, sorry, just to go back,
Go ahead.
this is not, I don't know exactly how this fits in, but it might fit in here. I believe, I'm looking over at Rosenberg's numbers and what they've done with No Kill and talking with Mara, their director, their first 2 years, they have a 90% save rate. This last year, they have a 95%. I did ask her like about her numbers, and she said that she has numbers. I guess, you need them legally, but the numbers and all of these agonizing decisions, they don't really matter because she doesn't get to that point. As far as what we can do to get there, looking at the exhausting all options, the only thing that I see that a no-kill philosophy, and, we can do our own thing, does that we don't, is a lot of transparency and under like the 4 Cs, if you add one that says right to life. To me, that's the only difference between what we've got and what they're doing. So maybe we could listen to her and invite her in. Possibly.
Can you please elaborate on the rights like and
Oh, by transparency, it would just mean obviously not starting with these reports that we've got, but just putting the information on the website, being open and transparent about no's and no's about.
So just to clarify, our report has all of that. data.
Yes,
It has all of the data regarding the nodes in and the nodes out.
Yes.
And how that outcome, and what those outcomes were. So I
Oh,
want to make sure
yes.
we all understand
Yes.
that all of the data is included on these reports.
yes.
You're
This
saying
would-
put it on the website.
Yes, this would just mean making it easier for the public to find. And I think just having it out there would help make us accountable to ourselves. There's no higher power, there's no other group, there's nobody else that's going to be telling us what we're doing or what we're not. This would just be, this is our goal. And we're going to be working on reaching.
And I would say that our staff does everything within their power.
Yes.
So, and I know the level of dedication that the staff at that shelter has. And I would say that there is no one that they hold more accountable than themselves.
Yes, I completely, and as I was asking all these questions incidentally, not just to that shelter, but to other shelters around here, I discovered that well, I knew that we did a really good job, but I didn't realize how good of a job y'all gave us the city. Yeah, we're quite lucky to have this support meeting, so thank you for that.
Well, and we can, I know like the posting the website and transparency isn't part of this conversation, so we can add that
Yes.
to the next agenda item, the next board
Yes.
meeting agenda to have a conversation around that.
Okay, great, yeah, just if we did all that, if we're exhausting everything, then I can see, yeah, we have that one. I believe.
So we went over triage and our tiered approach for our animals. And we talked about how our animals were taken in, examined them, and also looking at the approach as to how we would make determinations or identify particular animals when we reach a certain capacity level. This is a draft contingency plan, should we reach critical capacity. And for me, that does not mean that we wake up one morning, we've reached that capacity, and then by the end of the day, we're going to be making these initial decisions. That's not how this should ever work. And I would not let it work like that. This means we've identified we have reached a certain level of capacity where our resources and other things are being strained. And now we have to identify where we're going to go from here. This is dependent on available space, and not specifically the number of animals. So we're not looking at a count of the number of animals, because we could have 9 animals come in, but that could be 2 litters of tiny little kittens. And that's 2 enclosures. That's not 9 enclosures that we have to take up. So when we're talking about this percentage, we're talking about our available space to house them humanely, so that they're not sitting in carriers, they're not stacked on top of each other, they're not 6 inches away from each other and constantly having to mentally defend their own territory because they don't know what to do. We want to provide them all the same level of comfort that we do for all of our animals. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about available space, not specific number of animals. And here's the example I was talking about. Kittens needs 1 space, or a pair of dogs that enter the shelter together in 1 rut. And we've had dogs that have come in as husband and wife, brother, sister, brother and brother. And we kept them together. As long as they get along, we keep them together. If they're medium-sized to small dogs and they all get along, they all live in the same space. And we start maneuvering things around to make sure that they're all in 1 enclosure. So that's the approach that we're talking about when we're taking this. Triage could differ for new intakes for strays versus existing shelter residents. The new intakes, we're identifying behavioral patterns. We're looking at working them up medically to determine if there are any underlying medical conditions versus our existing shelter residents, which may be healthier or may be developing behavioral issues or an underlying medical condition that we weren't able to recognize at the time here. So these are all things that we're looking at in our approach. And some decision points may apply to both. Yes.
Could you remind us again the number of humane housing units available for cats and dogs? Do you have a
I
number? Or is
Not
that,
have that
okay,
number on right now,
that's okay.
but I will have it momentarily. Question mark? Or I can give you, I can't give you the exact number, and I don't want to make it up for you, but I can get that for you.
That's it.
But even with that number, regardless if that number was 100 or 200 or 300, we're talking about once we filled all of our enclosures in our available space, and now we're having to let's expand it in enclosures that it should be perfect.
I'm sorry. I think we had asked a couple meetings ago if we could request from the city extra. I understand that eventually you'll fill up whatever capacity you have, but did we request information on if we could get temporary capacity or some sort of building, just some sort of space for this spring season?
So that is a budget request, and it's not as simple as you think it is. Just like when we brought in Whiskerville, it doesn't happen in a short period of time. It takes months to get it identified, purchased, installed. It's not just next week we can have a building brought in. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that quickly. So that is always an option that we can ask for. We also have to find space on the site. We can't just throw it wherever we want it to either. But
we have
Whiskerville
this-
was brought in for that reason, to expand the animal shelter numbers. And I don't know the time it took for us once purchased to get it in, but we can't ask, but it's not gonna happen next month even.
What about that space that we got when we put
That-
our cats
Well,
out
what
of
about-
Whiskerville?
Yeah,
Mhm.
that'll
still
be
have that?
part of Dawn's update.
Do we
Yeah.
still
Yes.
have that?
Oh, yes,
And how do we, okay, yeah.
yes.
I'll wait, I'll be patient.
No, what,
Well, I was just wondering what the capacity, would that stay
What that
cat or?
number?
that's-
Um, We'll talk about that later,
Okay.
but yes, right now, we're currently using it for dogs. Yes, we are still using that, and
It'll stay.
yes. I fought for that. Excited.
Slide. Trigger the doing things is having exhausted. Temporary capacity, this is on that slide.
Well, it's more than temporary capacity, right? So you can bring in a building that holds 100, but you still have to have the people to be able to take care of it. So it's not just a one check of, we're gonna purchase a new temporary housing.
Implies that you are able to operate in space as you are operating in the take care of that is better. And I think to not consider that as one of the preconditions to some of these consequences.
We have to that, and that is actually and that is factored into the numbers that we gave you, because we currently have housing for 24 dogs. That's it. But we have made temporary space, and we have purchased many temporary enclosures for them that are in the hallways currently, like bathrooms that are near the exits where all of the dogs come in and out. The only place we haven't put them is where the volunteers have their things. So we've made temporary housing in all of those places, including the building that we're currently using for new dogs that we have. So we've actually factored that into the numbers because the original numbers for that building were not at a point where I felt that we would be at a place where we could not.
It's important not only for residents there, but in order to facilitate moving the animals through the shelter, so we don't end up having that to be there. It's important to have areas where you can have potential the space plans that we're thinking about include what we need to facilitate moving animals to come into the shelter.
Agreed. Absolutely. And I've taken steps for that as well. I gave up my office so that we could have a meet and greet place for the animals. It's got toys, it's got water bowls everywhere. It's got all kinds of things. It has a baby gate that I've tripped over several times, so that they can meet them in a quieter area in front of the lobby and take the time and close that door and we let them interact. And I just kind of watch through the window and let them kind of bond with the animals. Also, whenever we are in Whiskerville, we created a multi-cat area as well as a meet and greet area for cats specifically, which we didn't have before, where you can just quietly take a cat by yourself and not just go into their own personal space in their cage where it seems a bit more invasive. You can actually bring them into a room and just sit quietly with them for a while. So, and we're still actively looking at ways that we can make that work a little bit better. And as our numbers grow and change, some of that changes as well. Sometimes we have a puppy in my office. Sometimes we have one behind the lobby area. But we'll put a gate up, and that will be another meet and greet area as well. And we're looking into ways to bring in additional playpens and things like that for the summer months when you just want to take them outside and see how they do as well. So we went over this before. You all should have this PowerPoint, yes. I'm not going to go through every touch point, but this is the kind of the place where we start our discussion on each of these things. This is talking about the impact at 100%. All of this becomes cumulative as things get more and more and more. So this is kind of more of a time for us to talk about all of these different things. There were some specific questions and concerns about the process. And one of them was the operational impact, because the percentage or the number can change very quickly of reaching capacity at 100%, 110, 120. within 24 hours, weekend, pre-adoption event, post-adoption event. So that's one thing to consider. These particular points of impact. Are these the points that you want to have? Do you want to combine some together to make it a representation of what you're looking at? And so what I'm saying is, say we come in, I just use Monday. Monday we come in and it's at 95%. So we just know it's at 95%. We need to start calling some people. Let's get those fosters out. Let's make some cute pictures on Facebook. Let's see if anybody wants to foster in their office, whatever we can do. Adoption events that we can do. Now, Tuesday, we reach 100%. And so in that, within that next day, if our capacity, just putting a number out there, is 50, 110% is 55, correct? So from Monday to Tuesday, we could have reached 110% just like that. So that's the question that's going is, do we make a decision at 100% and the next day 110 and the next day 120, 125? Or are these just touch points where we start talking about identifying particular animals? I leave that to all of you to discuss. What I would say is 100% is when we just start having the talk. We start making the plan. We start identifying animals. But that does not mean that we start making decisions, because I can personally say, I know for a fact that next week there's 2 animals going out. Video going out for a senior foster, and we have adoption events this weekend. These are things that are currently going on. These are things I'm going to take into consideration when we get that 100%. So it doesn't mean that tomorrow we make those decisions. That means we're at 100%. We may be at 120 tomorrow, but I'm going to wait until the weekend is over to see how our adoption events go, to see how that email I put out to the foster went, to see if any cries to Facebook or any reach outs to rescues, did those work? Some days we're going to hit 120 quickly. Some days we may hit 150 before you know it, but we want these in place so that we are able to make these appropriate decisions objectively instead of subjectively.
I don't think we should wait until we're at 100. I think we need to be dealing with stuff like it's 75%. Put the foster stuff out there, but try to find 75. That gives you a lot of room to take animals in over the weekend, as you said. I mean, it should be a point where we just say, you know, we're at full capacity. If somebody's bringing an animal in, I mean, everybody else does it. Humane Society, I mean, all the other rescues, if they're at capacity, they're not saying, yeah, we'll take it. Why? Where are you going to put it? So you need to actually, you know, put a sign even on the door. We are at capacity. So the ones that we pick up on the street, we have to bring it.
And we don't take voluntary drop-offs.
Well,
People
people find them, they bring
find
them.
that they bring it.
And they say they're not mine, but half the time they are, but you know, we can't tell them a liar, so we take them out. But I mean, there is a point where we should, you know, do what everybody else does. We are at capacity. Unless we are bringing them in off the street, like our animal control officer goes out and pulls somebody off the street, you need to get them off the street. So we have to take those in. Somebody traps the cat, we have to take that in. With more traps in. So,
So
you
you're
know,
saying
put the sign on the door, we are at capacity. Here, and have little handouts next to it. These are all the rescue groups that will may have space. Please call one of these and say that you begin with these animals. I mean, you can't wait until you're at 100 to deal with. You can see I've been spending a lot of sleepless nights getting up and down this.
I understand and agree.
So you're saying add in at what capacity
75%.
percentage? So
We need
you're
to-
saying we no longer take in drop-offs?
We
Like
drop-offs.
it's only the city, our,
To
what
cover
we
while
get out.
we are pulling it off. the
What we
streets.
are legally
Or
required.
even at 90% do it,
by
but
law
we
of
need
animal
to, we need to start it
Yes.
before we're at 100. I mean, that's just like, you know, shutting the door after the cat got
And
out.
certainly, everything above 100 would eliminate the new intakes.
Ex-
And that
yeah.
much of that. Since all of these steps and consequences are dependent upon being at 100% or somewhere over that, I think we need, given the flexibility issues, it's not a point in time. It's a, but let's hypothesize that it's a point in time. somebody has to define what's 100%. So that we know when we're at 110%, or we know when 75%. We need to know what that is. Otherwise, we get, well, we have consequences for 130%. No, it's 120. No, it's 110. We just have to be able to identify what we're talking about. And some of these consequences are.
That would be based on the number that we gave you last month.
The PowerPoint presentation, but it was in a previous PowerPoint that we provided where we explained how many spaces we had available. I believe it
You
might have
emailed that
been.
PowerPoint.
It was something like $45, 70 or 75.
It was
Right.
enclosure.
And that would be the,
Yeah,
and if that's a number that y'all, we need to talk about, then that's something.
It was in
else.
the previous one, because to your point, it was, I remember seeing it in terms of, like you said all along, spaces.
Enclosure.
It has nothing to do with the number of animals, it's the spaces. So when all the spaces get filled, we're at 100%. But I'm just making up numbers.
Yeah.
You can have 40 spaces with 70 animals. So the focus should be on the capacity, not the number of animals. And I just don't remember what presentation it was in, but we have seen that before.
Must we allow cats to be trapped if we're at capacity? You said that we have to take those in. Is that something we have to do? Because very often those could be capturing animals that belong to somebody, but that they allow out. So
that's
you
what-
don't
yeah,
necessarily
okay,
have.
yeah.
At what capacity will you all like us to take a look at that ceasing visions?
About 75%, and then we reevaluate in 2 months and see if it works.
But I also think we need to do timing. You can't just assume 75% and not attach a time constraint on it. Because if you have 75% on Monday, on Thursday, 75% on Thursday, and we have a lot of events through the weekend, that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It could change from 75% to 64%. So you can't just say capacity is this without making a time constraint as to what time lapsing are you doing? Because these numbers fluctuate all the time.
Well,
So
and
on
like he
trucks, it's
said,
easy.
So I think there's two things we have to deal with that we're not dealing with.
because you
Or
even
drop-offs.
said,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no,
Interrupt you.
no, you didn't, but I was thinking the same thing. Because you just gave us an example of real life example. I'm gonna use 75%, that seems to be the number that was thrown out. 75%, but you already said this many animals are leaving next week. You have an event this week, so my question would be, at 75%, what action are we taking, right? Because you already said at 100% right now, you start calling, you start doing this, you start doing that, reaching out to rescues, sending out your emails. That's what I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't think that we're not doing
No,
that.
no, I know you
at
are.
that up
No, I know,
until-
I know you're doing all that. I'm actually confirming that. I was asking, as we're talking about 75%, is the recommendation to back that up and say at 75%, we're gonna start making calls, decisions, but that's already going on.
It's
So
already
how is
going
that
on,
gonna
yeah,
look different,
yeah.
75%?
It's just, you have more weight behind your request of we're at 100% capacity. And
Okay,
so that gives more weight because obviously there are other entities
Right.
that have a time
Mhm.
where their time is limited and that helps spur those organizations to help them by taking animals.
Mhm.
Whereas we've been told in the past, well, y'all aren't really a priority because we know you're not going to do anything with them. So by having this, it also helps us in
Mhm.
that call to say,
Okay.
we're at 100% and here's
Right.
what is going to happen to, and maybe it's these specific animals.
Okay.
It just gives us more power.
No, that puts some clarity around
tone,
it. The
the
tone,
messaging.
okay. Yeah.
That's, yeah,
Well, that gave some clarity because I didn't think anything necessarily different
Yeah.
would be happening outside of what you're already doing. But I like what she said because it resonated with what you said earlier, that attach a time to it, or maybe that time might be to allow for responses or something. because we might be 75% and like current state, you might already know, okay, next week, if nothing else changed, next week we're gonna be at 50% because I got this many animals going out the door.
Yeah.
So we have to consider that as well.
Yeah. it's not-
And I think that's what Don was saying,
Right.
knowing what's happening, and if we're putting calls out saying we're at capacity and we need help, no decisions are gonna be made until they respond
Right.
back and say, sorry, we
Yeah, but
can't
let's start
take
that
it
at
But
anymore.
again, you
75% though,
need
and not
a
at
time constraint.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
it's like an equation. You can't do an equation. You just say the result is.
I have an
10%.
equation for
So it
you.
could be linked.
Oh, wait a minute, it might be.
Okay, so dynamic capacity is, there's lots of equations for all the kinds of things that we're talking about. And as most of you know, I'm a numbers person who wants to see the data and track the numbers and know how this year compares to last at the same time and all that good stuff. Well, dynamic capacity takes the number of humane housing units times the number of days, and it could be different time periods that you're measuring. Maybe you want to measure a year, maybe you want to measure some shorter period, and then divides it by the average length of stay. And so I took those numbers and kind of plugged in some things so I could see that at different numbers, it would tell me how many animals I could bring in per day if the rate of, if our adoption rate, which I think is steady, continue as it has been. And so I think that, I don't know that that's exactly the right equation, but I think that there are some some equations that can be looked at over time that would kind of normalize the numbers as you're suggesting, as opposed to just this random, we hit 75%.
Yeah.
Don has a lot of experience, so he knows that he has what numbers he's likely to see at these future events, and in his head, he's saying, I'm going to wait. If it's not Don doing it, then, or if it's his staff, you're out having an operation or something. Your staff has probably learned by that
Thanks,
point.
Barb.
But I'm
Yeah,
just,
we'll
no,
send
I'm
flowers.
just,
We'll send flowers.
Don, don't go out.
you want to put a process that other people besides somebody who knows things in their head can follow. That's all I'm saying. And so I think we should look at some of those.
Another thing is questionable is, okay, let's say we're at capacity for several days. How do we change that capacity? Do we put down new intakes without any medical training, no cost of medical treatment or training or volunteer support or socialization? Or do we put down the ones that we had for maybe 8 months that we put in the treatment and we spent the money and we have volunteers that have socialized with? So what do we do? The old ones that we can get rid of or the new ones that we can get rid of? That's another thing. And
What do you mean?
who makes the final decision? I mean, who plays God over this? My opinion, I think when we run into this major thing, that's when we call an emergency of the board and talk to the professional people on the staff of your board. Not just one person, goes, okay, that one's going to be cremated, that one's going to be cremated. Or 3 people in the shelter goes, well, Don's in the hospital, so that one is going to be cremated and that's.
So I would say that that's the purpose of this
That's what that, yeah, I think
I'm
that's what
sorry?
we're doing.
Yeah, that's what these triage options are.
I
It
know, but
says
somebody's got to bring it forth. You can digest anything off of a thing, and then when it happens, no one takes the responsibility. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think those are boards.
No, so if y'all approve some type of percentage triage option, Dawn is responsible for implementing that. If John's not here, it's his supervisor is implementing that. That's part of staff's job is the implementation.
But who
It wouldn't
decides?
come back to.
Who
you.
decides on the staff job? Who decides putting the needle?
John
So
will,
he is
he
gonna
will
be the
utilize,
sole person on his shoulders to take Christie down because they have worked for Christie for 8 years, and we need to have that 8 thing free, so we're gonna get rid of Christie.
no, he's not making the decision, that the triage options are making the decision and creating that list, not John specifically. That's what this is supposed to do, is create the option of what we could do in the event that we continue to apply and adoption events aren't so successful. It's not him going in and saying, you.
Yeah, but
It's
triage
Josh.
suggestion, you can fit any animal into a triage suggestion.
Well, but
I
if
mean,
you
I
look
don't-
at that, there is nothing about length of stay on any of his triage things, so the animals that have been
It's health
in
and
for a
it's
year.
medical and
So
behavior.
that's one thing we should do on the fostering is get our 6-month and older out on a foster poster saying, give these animals a break from the shelter. Please foster these animals for your capacity. Here are the owners that have been here for 6 months. What a great win-win situation. The animal gets out for a week, a few days, gets home, people might fall in love and that'll be it, and then we have to worry about it. But, you know, let's get our let's foster out, not the new ones coming in, let's foster out the ones that have been sitting in the cage for 6 months.
Is the triage, I guess, or your schedule, is this what is being proposed, correct? I just want to.
That is a recommendation.
This is the
and
recommendation, excuse me.
Y'all
Okay.
can, like, things can be removed,
Uh-huh.
things can be added, it can be completely, you can delete steps. It is open for discussion. So
Okay.
if the board's not comfortable with some of the steps, then let's discuss and take them out to get to a point where y'all are comfortable and can approve something that we can implement, because we are coming into love season and the animals are going to flow in and we will be hitting capacity. I don't know if by numbers we are at capacity now, but we've got to have some method of making decisions. It's not subjective, that it's clearly outlined.
Well, and if we're not taking in strays, then that whole first column is cut, because we're not taking in anything except that comes in off the street.
Correct. So if we're, well, not necessarily true, because we're still taking in the running at large animals that we get called out
Well, that's
for.
what I mean,
That's
except the
still
ones that we go out. and
So
get.
that would still be stray though. It would
Yeah,
still
but
be
it'll
brought
only
in.
be a handful versus a lot that
Well,
come
correct,
in from.
Correct, but it's still a category.
Yeah,
that's
oh, I
in-
know, I
Yes,
know,
but
I
we
know.
would, so if we did, if y'all approved or added in the 75% where we're stopped taking drop-offs and we're stopped issuing tracks to then have to bring in trapped animals, those are already excluded. But we would still take in the strays or the running at larger when we're called or something's in the field. And then we have our in-care animals.
Yeah, so we can always add that tier into it as well.
Now, there is a feline loop rescue in town, is there,
I think it's, I know the one in Austin,
Austin? I thought there was.
I know they
I'll go do some more research.
they get full, but we always reach out to them, like, the day we know, and see if they have space. I think, when I came in last year, so we made a few calls out to them, and they kind of gave us like, well, in a few days, we'll have some, we're like, we'll see you in a few days. But we'll make calls out to those. And if there's any others that you know, you said there's some here in town, I'd love to know. the names.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go. I thought I run across something, I go, oh.
It's
I'll
just
see
a
what I
drive,
got, where I saw it.
that's the price, I guess.
Yeah.
I like that. So this is just at 100%, and then I can flip through these, and may have those in front of you. And when we're looking at this, we're talking about what we're going to do with our strays for cats or dogs, those that are currently in care. The main thing with them is we're looking at highly contagious diseases that don't have a good outcome, or something that is highly infectious and can become systemic, that's hard to control, and then severe behavior issues. So those are the main things that we're looking at, and then upper respiratory infections that can that are not getting better or getting worse. Usually that's indicative of a much stronger strain or different types of viruses and bacteria. Yes.
Issue with heartworm. You know, because of we're in a southern state, a large percentage of the dogs we get in are heartworm positive. It's never been an issue for us. It doesn't affect their behavior. We have treatment solutions, so on and so on. I have a problem with that being on there, and then I have a what if scenario. What if Tinkerbell had come in heartworm positive? This is an extremely adoptable dog we had come in recently. She's already on a single. Yes, I'm prejudiced to Golden, but. No. So
So you'd like to see that off?
I
That's
would,
something we can do. Do you want to start? that now?
unless, caveat that, if they're, I don't know, because I know there's what, good, fair, and poor.
Yes, so there's actually, you can grade them between
Yeah.
like 1 and fair, 1 to 4, but usually say good, fair, and poor as far as how they're able to handle the treatment. 'Cause that's our biggest thing is, has it already medically affected the heart where there's deformity of the heart and they have congestive heart failure, they're
Yeah, I
coughing?
mean, if they're a
That's-
poor candidate.
Yeah,
So then changing that to heartworm positive
Poor
condition?
candidate, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
because there may be some that we may hold on to, we may not treat, or we take. And so that's something, so this. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to edit it, hopefully in real time.
Or I can go get my computer if we need to.
Are we able to pull it out of the Zoom?
Yeah. Or maybe some of these will have a combination, like, let's say it's heartworm positive, fair condition, and they have a behavior issue.
Or they have,
You know,
Yeah.
I'm just saying
Something
there's
to-
gray areas within.
Yeah, that, whichever makes y'all feel more comfortable. We started with this framework because we were talking about this, like, what are some things we're talking about, resources, we're talking about medical conditions,
Yeah.
the capacity for us to be able to adopt a lot of these out. So, using heartworm, I was on there because a lot of doctors do not want to do the treatment, or even with the treatment, there's the stigma of the heartworm treatment as well. But
But I think they're, in my opinion, from being with dogs for so long, that the heartworm treatment or the condition, if they're a good or fair candidate, is fixable. And I would say behavior is a harder thing. Because we get so many dogs and we have some now, and there are some people that love those 2 dogs or however many there are. And all I can think is, how can we put that dog in a home? And, you know, and those dogs may be somebody's favorites as far as the volunteers, and that's fine. You're just walking in, but he or she isn't living in a home, and you're not out walking the dog on your street, and another little dog walks by, that dog gets away from you. I have a lot more issues with behavior than I do with a medical condition that's treated.
The thing when you get a stray, the first time you don't know what their behavior is. That's the thing.
Takes,
it takes but that's where
yeah.
but that's where the assessment also comes in.
Yeah.
Where I use my training, and we also, it's not just me. I pull a lot of people, and sometimes I'll grab you and other people and be like, hey,
Where am I saving it?
tell me what you see. And let's look at this. And then we set up kind of a,
And then go to
I guess, treatment for them to work through them, both using medical chemicals, trazodone, other different things to kind of calm them down, a change of location. We even have an area that we work where we put them in a quieter space, so they're not as stressed out and as highly stimulated. And then we reassess because we need to see if it's working. And things like that. So with the heartworms that we do have a veterinarian that does treat those. So we can make that amendment.
I have a question on, when I reviewed the last meeting, y'all were talking about $600 a treat. I couldn't tell every word, but like, maybe you'll Dr. Coffee here. Have y'all considered doxycycline? Like, I know it's cheaper. I just don't know if that would be a good discussion depending upon budget.
We use doxycycline currently for, and we actually use that because that's the initial part of the treatment. Any dog that comes in heartworm positive is put on 30 days of doxycycline. The reason for that is the actual heartworms, the bacteria that they have a symbiosis with to thrive. We use the doxycycline to kill that bacteria, which makes them weaker. So when they do get the
No,
heartworms,
leave it in.
it actually is more effective. So that 95 to 98 becomes like 99 to 100%.
Just do poor condition. It stays in just as. Or poor, is it poor rating or poor condition?
Poor candidate.
Here, I was gonna say, here, you want me to do it? Since I'm sitting right
Sorry,
Candidate.
here. You're fine.
I like my coach.
Poor candidate.
Is it poor, like, is it a poor rating?
Well, that's kind of, it's actually, medically, it's a grade. What we've been using with the current veterinary, he just says good, fair, poor. But what we actually should be, what we use are the x-rays to determine if there's deformity of the heart and visible signs, which is fatigue, coughing, which is indicative of heart failure, fluid retention on the belly, age, as to whether they're able to make it through the treatment. And with that, we do rely on the veterinarian that's actually giving the treatment to make that recommendation. That's not something anyone on the staff is going to stand around and go, I think you can make it. We send those to the veterinarian and have them determine, is this a candidate? If they have their doubts or they're not sure, then
Have any other farmhouse? But what about, I mean, should we add, dogs that have severe illnesses they can't recover from? I think it was Dell that had, she was pregnant and it was.
yes,
heart failure.
yes.
I mean,
So for this particular one, these are dogs that have been screened and are deemed moderate to good as far as their health goes. If on intake, we have assessed their health to where it's already grave to poor prognosis and the chances and quality of life are already so poor, then that would be outside of this particular thing.
okay,
So
we wouldn't have even done.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. A good example would be, I'm not sure if you've seen Robin, but the small tan dog behind the desk right now, very old. But
Dottie or the other?
not Dottie.
Not
Dottie's-
the other one.
Yeah, the other one is probably 14 or 15. All of the teeth are almost gone. Dental disease grade of 5, which means they're ready to fall out or they're just infected. No muscle mass on the legs, falling over, when walking, grade 3 heart murmur, and arthritis. However, the doctor has said that there's no medications needed for the heart. So we're going to see how the arthritis looks and pay meds and see if we, we assessed that there's no quality of life issue at this point based on what the veterinarian has said. So option as long as nothing else. Good dental cleaning, maybe soft food for the rest of the time. So we're good at this one?
Does everybody agree?
Or does anyone have any concerns?
Yeah, would we make it easier to go?
We can vote on
Yeah,
each
we
one.
can.
There's nothing saying that we have to vote the full package. We could
We're
vote
gonna
as we
add
go.
that 75% that we're going to.
So the 75% that y'all stated was stop taking drop-offs and stop issuing tracks. So if y'all want to vote on the 75 and the 100 or one or the other, all you need is a motion, a second, and then we vote.
75% of capacity, when we reach 75% of capacity, not number of animals, but capacity. That we could take animals and like.
I know as a citizen of the city, that I would be happy if my shelter was not at 100% capacity. But they find that, little white proof dog, I mean, yesterday, they found it on the street. Luckily, the owner came in right behind it. But I mean, they find them on the street, it's just, they didn't call us to come pick it up, they brought it in themselves, it wasn't an owner's right. Yes, we don't take that. But people bring in dogs all, cats all the time that they found. So that's which is.
Maybe we just have that at 100%.
So,
But at 75%, we need to go reach out to Foster and do what you now do all the other stuff.
Would you still like to see issuance of tracks and stuff?
That's, yeah, that's
Would
different.
that also be a?
Take the traps out.
Yeah,
That's right.
so keep the tracks and things.
And that,
Well,
yeah,
you want to stay right below capacity. I don't think we want to be at capacity and over, because that's when you get all these animals stuck. And they're all in stressful situations that they're on top of each other. So the minute you reach out 100, you're at 100. Anything over that, you're going to put them in the rooms.
Wait for the weekend.
Oh, yeah, wait till
for the
after,
event.
if you have a bidded option,
Yes.
then that's.
same rate, maybe 70, maybe
I
raise
don't mind.
past
wording it
75
with
and make it higher to
discretion.
75.
With discretion.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
something like that. with
85.
Oh,
discretion
yeah, all of
or
it's
something
gonna
like
have discretion. Yeah. Again, it's not gonna be, oh, we've hit this bait. Like, you know,
Yeah.
now,
Yeah, but
these two things
that's what-
would be, right? So at 75%, we're gonna stop issuing
Yes.
traps, but we're gonna still provide service to the traps that are already out there. We just won't issue any new ones.
Right.
Same with drop offs. When we hit the 100%, we're gonna communicate we're stopping drop offs. Those will be immediate and then would come off once we come back down. But the other stuff is,
Oh, okay, hold on. Take the animals, and what do we need to do to,
Get into these fosters. Like, would you say that there were some things that we needed to do?
But that's the stuff they're doing all day.
well, that's what
Yeah.
you should be doing that as an ongoing.
Like,
Yeah, that's ongoing, and
Yeah.
that's not really, I mean, it's
only-
ongoing,
yeah,
but
it's just a
it's.
messaging
it's
changes
all
as it comes
triage
out.
recommendation.
That we are
It
at
doesn't-
capacity
Yes,
and
yeah.
we-
Yeah.
And the other thing, we need to let the volunteers know that as we get to that, we see the implementation that we have, because they would want to know. I mean,
Oh, yeah, anything, so like this option, like once we get a approved triage option, right, or step option, like this will be communicated to city council. And then once it's approved that we're doing it all, that's a communication in public education, right? So we'll have to communicate the new policy changes. In some form or fashion, like whether it be at a happy hour, like educating the volunteers on the changes, but yes.
Saying that. Still authorizes you. Exceeding capacity, reach that.
we have not authorized any euthanasias based upon being a healthy or anything on this list. Anything that would be a quality of life where they are already passing or the veterinarian has recommended that from the time they came in. Some animals come in and they've been hit by a car or they're already super sick or super old. And then they'll make that recommendation. Oh, I'm sorry. We would, yes, well, these, we would not deal, until we get to 100%, we would deal with them accordingly, and they would be part of the ones that we are caring for. When we get to 100%, then we would identify these as ones that we would have the most maintenance.
Perhaps the,
Trigger that. Correct. The lack, that, yes, once we, the lack of capacity, once we reach where we have no other spaces, that will trigger this particular.
Right, but
And
the
if the
thing is,
concern is-
once we're at 100%, and these animals that come in don't fall in any of these categories, we're
Okay.
automatically already going to be over capacity by one person.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, if they don't, if we have 0 animals that fit this,
Yeah,
we're then waiting to hit the
Six.
next level, if that potentially changes it. And if y'all don't want this to happen at 100%, then what percentage would you want these to be considered? I mean, again, like everything's open for discussion. It's not this has to be the percentages, this has to be. Y'all want things changed.
I'm of the opinion of 75%, which would give us a little freeway to 100%. And a time frame. Again, if you have 75% on Thursday, you could drop down to 68% on Monday because of everything we're doing. We need to have time frame. And we also, and this is totally my opinion, we also need to have a vet sign off on it to say this dog cannot be helped or financially supported or anything. And if you have a drop off, we should make availability of scanning or whatever.
Oh,
in that
yeah.
guide
Yeah,
before
absolutely.
we not, because what's gonna happen is they're gonna just not. We have to stop. I don't know how we are gonna do it, guys. We
Yeah,
have
the
to
reality
stop
is people are gonna show up
non-Sugar
and-
Land people from dropping off animals to us. Because that's, you know, why go down to SPCA when you can just go right up here? We could take a dog because I can say I'm in Sugar Land or that's my dog, or I found it down the street when it's gone. I don't know the answer to that one. I mean, I'll just drink my water.
That's something I think we discussed. as
Because
well.
I'm sure we get a lot of them, do we not, Don? I mean, not a lot, but some.
A significant number do have addresses that are outside of Sugar Land.
Here we go. And
So it
that's-
could be you stop taking drop-offs from residents outside the city.
I don't
That's
know.
75.
I mean, that's,
I like that.
see, I think, personally, yes.
Unless they
but
can
we
prove
do
that
it
they're a
before we
resident.
do guidelines or
Waterville
whatever?
or some type of.
Yeah, they should get approved their resident.
yeah.
I mean, is that something that we do at 75%, or is that something that we do all the time?
It should be all the time.
All the time.
I agree.
All the time.
Because what we have found that usually the people that are from out of town can't or have a difficulty telling us where they found the animal. Have a difficulty telling us where they found the animal, or where they found the animal is usually across the street or on Highway 59. And they usually happen to have a harness that fits their animal exactly
Really?
and a matching leash and collar
Oh,
They should be able to, I like
that they tell us we can
If they're a
have.
resident.
on
Yeah.
goodness of our-
yeah.
so.
Well,
And,
how,
you
how
know,
do the other shelters do it? Have you contacted Fort Bend, and how do they do it? I know Renee must have a reason, you know, I mean, not except somebody
Fort Bend,
in Fort Bend, which Renee's cool. I mean, but I think we need to do that as.
I know, I'm like, non-residents, I don't want, I'm like.
Yeah, not residents,
Yeah.
that's work.
I really think we need to do that, or at least make an
Oh.
attempt.
oh, we're
Thank
putting
you,
this
sorry.
under. Fishing traps.
Yeah, I'm okay with the non-residents all the time.
So do we ever
I
want
see, I
to
think
stop
we need to
accepting
do
from
that.
residents? But that's a
Like just
question too.
all of.
Yeah,
When we get to 100%.
But then we have to give them an option.
Oh, yeah, we give
And
them,
give them a list
we
and
give them a list
say,
of places where they can
Renee
take
can
their
see
animals.
if it's important.
And I would
We always-
encourage to, this sort of kind of addresses your time
Oh, good.
recommendation. But I agree. If we're gonna stop taking them at 100% from residents, or 100% from residents, with all the resources, and especially if it's their dog, right? I mean, if they say they found it, that's enough. We can never confirm that, really, honestly. But hey, this dog's not working out, whatever, we're at 100%, then give them the resources and encourage them. Call us tomorrow, call us the next day, because these numbers change, right?
Or have
Especially-
somebody call them.
Yeah, if they're dropping off and
I'll do the
well,
calling.
the shelter already knows, man, it's a good week. We've adopted 6 dogs. Well, technically, the next day they should be out. We should be below capacity. So you know, that's, I believe you said,
And-
telling residents not to drop their dogs off is not going to go over well with residents. So you have to make that effort to let them know, check with us tomorrow. We're going to help you, whatever you need to do.
And we
Massage
offer
that
to
relationship,
foster as
right?
well.
A foster,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that. And you can call a foster up or something, but,
They don't add, provide resources to the non-residents too.
Yeah.
So at least that's the service.
because you could have a person, because we all see them all the time, all over the city, not along all over, but in certain areas of the city where there are dogs loose running, people that may work over here and go back to Houston and whatever. And they have good intentions to drop the dog off as a stray, but it's 100% and they can't. They're just gonna go drop it back off on the street where they found it. So definitely providing resources for that. Because, you know, we talk about the people that are trying to pull it faster on us, but a lot of people, you'd be surprised, they have pretty good intentions. And if we're at 100% and they're like, well, I just found this dog on my way home, I work at blah, 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 and we know it's in the city, and we're still telling them no, chances are, give them the resources and be prepared if they just drop it off.
And we
right
will.
outside.
Yeah.
that's why I
And
said
we-
make
and
sure.
we-
you know, make sure-
Right, and then
And for those that do,
responding.
What's
yeah,
that?
And then we're responding and getting it running at large, which then, yeah.
Yes, yeah,
It'll-
we're
it'll
responding
happen.
because again, the people that have the good intentions, that can tell you where they found it, where they work. I live over here. This dog's been living outside our shop for a week. We don't know what to do with it. And then we're turning him away. We better be prepared to go pick it up.
one thing I've also done in the past, offer the person who found it to foster.
That's good.
Sometimes they're like, oh, he's so sweet,
Yeah.
he did great with my dogs, I just can't keep him. I said, that's great, we're gonna give you food, we're gonna give you a cage, and
Yeah.
and
A
we'll
lot
give
of
you a call when
people
we have a
will do that.
space.
They'll do that.
Or something where they foster or
Yeah,
provide
They
them,
will do it. We will.
outlets as
post
far
it.
as social media, and we become a resource while they're fostering,
Yeah.
and then
That's
we have a place. So, and come up with solutions like that for them
Yeah.
as well, or posting it on their local
Yeah.
neighborhood next door. Some people don't know that that's the quickest way for
Right.
pets to be found.
Seriously.
Next door is amazing.
And that has worked
Yeah.
constantly. Yeah.
It doesn't
And just
matter.
say, hey.
And I think that's something new. So in the past, I felt like Animal Services has struggled with this idea from the public that we euthanize too much. And since you've been on board, I've noticed that when dogs are found, they're immediately posted on social media to find their people. And me looking at that, that's a positive thing. That's kind of overcoming the idea of those people who say, don't take anything to Sugar Land Animal Shelter. And so as I listen here, I like everything I'm hearing, but then I also like that that we've been doing that. And so those animals, then we lose that. I look at that kind of as goodwill that you're
Right, I
developing in
agree.
the community.
Totally agree.
And if we stop doing that, then you lose that. So I'm also looking at some of this and thinking, where are all the touch points that we have with community, especially when we're talking about building shelters and having a positive kind of review from the community. I'd like to completely do away with that part.
I agree, and the community should be more involved, but goes back to the city of Sugar Land, that we have, needs to have community communications from the city to like the HOAs, because they can post it on their website, in their newsletters, and even put someone from, you know, all of us, I guess, unless it's changed, represents a certain location in the area. That, like, I'm past the airport. I'm on the other side of the tracks. And so that's my area. Well, then my area should be told in that HOA newsletter what's going on in the shelter and how we can do it. And if you find an animal, contact us or contact your representative on the board and post my name and my email and my phone number. Not that I know what you do, everything you guys are doing, but it's a connection to get the community back into our area in this subject.
Well, I think posting the way they've been doing, it's generating
Oh, it's
public
great.
comment.
Oh, yeah.
And people are saying, people are now directing owners with lost animals to call the shelter first thing, and that isn't something
Right.
that has always been done. But at the same time, I don't want to say we do it no matter the capacity, so. I guess I would say, let's just think about that group of animals, because when we say we don't want residents dropping off, that's a large part of the animals that are being dropped off.
But we also must be educating the people of what to do and where to go and who to talk to. Sometimes when I was marketing director of a shelter in Alabama, and they just want to talk to somebody. What suggestions do you have? Where do we go to? And I was the marketing director, so I would get all these calls and I'd say, yeah, we will scan them free. We had a foster program if they would keep it, the animal until we could get it adopted. But you need some person that they can call, that they can feel that they have, somebody gives a care. I was going to use something stronger, but I didn't. Gives a care is a lot easier and you wouldn't have to write me up. Anyway, so it's just a thought, but I think we can, again, think outside the box, which you guys have done with Facebook, and Constellation Field thing was awesome with the puppies, and then when they, I mean, anyway, but I think we can gain the community with us, to be with us, not against us.
I guess the message is we're at capacity. I'm sorry, we can't help you right now. And that delivers that capacity message back to the community as well.
And one other, I guess, aspect of that as well is a lot of the people who bring theirs or drop them off first call 311. That's usually when they patch them through us and say where to find it. Not all of them come through the door. A lot of them call first, and then we work closely with the 311 to create a decision tree so they can kind of give them that message and that information before they even get in their car and tell them
That's true.
this is what's happening. We can also communicate with them as well and make part of that, letting them know, hey, we're at capacity. We're not taking traps right now. This is what's going on. And send an email or something like that. Communicate with them. I have a coordinator who can do that. And that way, when people are calling in, we're already letting them know and providing resources. And we can add something like the resources that are available on our website. So,
Any other thoughts on this?
I think it's cleared up a lot for a lot of us. Am I not right, guys?
So were we voting on each one or the finished product?
I think we'll vote on each one. If you're comfortable with that, and then move on to the next one.
It can be done however, yeah.
yeah, it's open.
I'm just thinking that that may be a way to get some of it.
At least implement it instead of start it.
Can you educate me quickly on the URI? What happens after 14 days if they're not cured? What does that mean?
an upper respiratory infection, this is more specific for cats than dogs. Dogs, they have a different disease process, but with cats, they are susceptible to very varying different strains, and a lot of times the strains happen at the exact same time. There's feline herpes, there's Felicia virus, there are a couple of bacterial infections that can also happen. Now with the viral infections, they're self-limiting, which means that in 14 days, just like having the flu or, or like having COVID, you should be okay in 14 days. You should start to see an upswing in the first 7. Some of these viruses, however, mutate in the body, and it just depends on the cat, and then it becomes something more than upper respiratory, it becomes upper respiratory, and they start to develop ulcers in their mouth, where they're unable to eat or swallow. It affects their teeth, and then they start to slowly fade. And then a lot of this depends on whether their immune system has been compromised. For kittens, if they didn't get their mother's milk in the first few days, they're already going to be in a bad position. And strays that are at large that have been vaccinated against these are also very susceptible. So the treatment plan that we do for 14 days with the strongest antibiotic that we can give. It helps for the bacterial portions. Some of those bacterial infections are transmittable to humans as well. But the ones that we really look at are the viral infections as well. So after 14 days, we should have already seen them start to get better and better and better and better. Even if they come in just horrible, their eyes are just closed completely shut, with the ointments and making sure that they're warm, they're eating, and giving them fluids and different things like that. After 14 days, we should have seen an improvement. If we haven't seen an improvement, that's generally indicative that their immune system is not responding very well, or that they have a more virulent strain. And when we're looking at the health of the herd, as it were, especially with cats, which are housed much closer with dogs, there's a high probability that that's going to spread a lot faster and quicker, especially
Or
if you
can
have
we add
kids.
with no signs of improvement after the 14 days?
Okay.
that way we know that-
So it's not just 14 days.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, because if we see improvement, we're going to be like, okay,
Okay.
We'll
it's
see-
day
we'll see you in a
14, but
week.
Guess what? They're eating and.
yeah, they're
their eyes
eating
are
and
open
they still just have the sniffles, just like some of us, I get the flu. I'm a big baby.
For all of these studies.
Yes.
At 100% capacity. They are not really capacity related. What you will do in these cases. 90% capacity.
Correct. We would,
Or are you saying that there's some capacity factor that changes what you would do in these cases?
yes, at 100, if we weren't at 100% capacity, some of these cases, we would treat anything that's treatable. Absolutely. When we get to 100% capacity, there are going to be some on here that may be treatable with an extended amount of resources where we don't have the room to treat them because they are highly infective and can pass that on. Sarcoptic mange heavy in dogs. That's very contagious.
Something
Yeah.
communicable whether you're.
Exactly. But
So, but there are certain of these situations that below capacity, you take on and treat and perhaps.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
I guess I want to preface any vote I take on anything by saying what you guys were talking about before. That in order for us to begin to take steps to construct additional capacity, that it takes time and animals aren't going to wait for it to happen. I'd like to urge that we ask the city to pursue actively now whatever it takes to get some new capacity, which then benefit the animals no matter what level of capacity we are at, because we have more capacity, and if it takes time, it takes voting, it takes convincing people, it takes planning, it takes buying, it takes finding the right place on the land. Start now. My voting on this would be conditional upon that.
Absolutely.
That would, what he's talking about would need approval in the CIP process, right? Or with the budget, it's the annual.
Capital.
Whatever. As soon as we got to the point of doing a lot of work on this board, and figuring out what kind of capacity and nature and the components of a new shelter would be. And for various reasons, bond issue hasn't gone forward, and there may be significant delays now for a number of other reasons why it won't happen for years. And the animals are going to. We can't count on the new shelter solving our capacity problem, but we can move forward and do something now, today, if not yesterday, we can do it now to get moving forward on getting some capacity increase. Whether it's space for a vet tech, whether it's space for bringing in people to adopt, maybe it's space for the animals themselves. I don't care how you want to use it as best you can, but all of this emphasizes that there's a capacity, and then there's 120% of that capacity. Well, to me, we're not doing our job if we don't answer the bid. And not waiting. All the rest of this stuff is important because it won't happen instantaneously. But it won't happen at all if we don't do it and push it. And that should be, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest push we make is to make capacity a bigger.
I appreciate that. Yes.
It
Yes.
was a whole lot smaller. As a shelter was too small.
The city has grown and the shelter.
You know, we used to not. Time. Start covers. I don't see that change. I don't like that. Decisions impacted by capacity issues.
Other thoughts on this? Anybody? So we said we were going to vote on the different percentages.
Sarah proposed reload, percent capacity.
What about the 75?
And the operational.
And there's a second.
So Robin,
Now we just.
All of those in favor? Hold your hands up, please.
Okay. Conditional as well.
Okay, all those in favor, can you just hold, are you recording?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're
We're
already
recording who votes yes.
Okay. 2, 3, 4, 6.
So, yeah, that's what the condition.
And then the two, they're saying they're.
So
The
then
motion,
they're-
the motion
the
was,
motion,
yeah, you
yes,
got it on
as
the actual
So
So
motion.
it's
Yeah.
either yes or
Okay,
no
so
to
yes,
that motion.
okay.
No.
Okay, so can we read it?
Okay, all of those in favor, and
As
then
it
I'll
is.
do
As it is.
opposed after. And then opposed. Okay, then let's go on to
So the
the,
motion passes.
the motion passes 8-2.
there's 10 of us.
Oh.
So we vote.
Y'all vote.
Yeah, I did
Sorry.
not know that. I had to clarify, so we're members of the board.
You are. Okay.
Okay, so then just to clarify, the motion passes by a vote of 8 in favor and 2 against.
So we're, this is 110%. We talked about the different things that can happen. That's when we are past the enclosures that we have available or the temporary ones that we're currently using. And we are having to put them in either smaller areas or makeshift areas as well.
Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, yeah,
You
sorry.
tell me when
Yeah.
to.
There you go. So
To the
if
next
you can go to the next one, this is the decision tree. So whatever you see,
Why are we doing this? I mean, why are we going, without a time frame? Why are we going over 110%?
you mean like the time frame when we hit 100% wait a week?
Yeah,
Like
why
wait a
are we
week before we-
messing with this? Please explain that. To me. Because we just approved 100% with a time frame of 75. Okay, now we're going to go through all of these within a half an hour.
So we've gone through it before.
I know.
This
we
is
did,
just making
and there were
sure
issues
If
before,
y'all,
because we're
if
not-
y'all don't have any changes, you can do a vote on all of them and approve them. But if y'all want to go by each capacity, then, and vote for level, then that's, it's
Each-
totally up to y'all.
Each capacity does not have a time frame. So it's a non-issue to vote on something. I mean, Barbara just came up with a little diagram with the numbers. I am not a numbers person, but we did 100% capacity with a time frame, and we've all approved it.
But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean you're gonna stay at 100% because not all the animals may fall into those categories. And so you may continue to bring in and you
In a
continue to
half an hour,
grow
we're gonna
capacity.
go through all of
Well,
this.
there's,
That's up to however y'all want to do it. It was suggested that we go by each
Right,
level, which
but
we
why do
can.
we do it
and we
without
can-
a time frame?
I guess I don't understand the time frame.
The time frame is you can get 100% on Friday,
Uh-huh.
dip down to a 95% within a time frame of 4 days. There's no time frame when it comes to 100%. Because it could be the day after we reach 100%.
so I think I'm trying to.
Waiting period on
understand.
this, okay.
If we're at 100%, you start with your example. If
Oh,
we're,
no,
if we're at
go ahead.
90% on Wednesday, and we're making all the decisions that we're at 70%, and then Monday's events don't go well, so Thursday, we're at 90%, Monday, we're at 100%. We're gonna take the things into consideration that we just voted on, the actions.
Right.
Then it dips up and down, and then maybe we have a spike and there's a holiday. And then by Friday, we're at 109%, or let's just say 110%. Then we're gonna implement whatever it is we approve. I think with the time, because we can't maybe suggest a time, would that be back where you were saying that you're kind of monitoring? It's almost like it's ongoing. The monitoring is ongoing.
It's ongoing, like the triage, I
Because
guess the changes just state what we're looking
What we're
at.
looking at, yeah.
Yes,
Okay, that makes sense. So
Not so much what we're.
90 to
what we're looking
100.
at.
we keep looking at more of a chunk
Yeah.
of
what's the-
potential because animals may not fit into a category here, but then
Gotcha.
once the next level adds in
Uh-huh.
the italicized one, so
Yep,
maybe now there's
okay.
animals that fit into that. So again, it's still the same as before. Hey, well, we're at 110. We can consider these animals, but
Right.
we have an adoption then, and we've
Yep,
reached out.
yep, okay, I
It's the
see.
same thing. It's just increasing
Right.
what medically and behaviorally we're looking
Looking
at.
for, okay, that makes sense.
I think
Yeah.
what
Then
she's
then we
saying,
have to change this one to agree with the wording.
Right, we have to
that-
change.
Correct.
all
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it.
yeah, we
How
can
we-
read that.
We have to
Yes.
change every single one before we vote on it.
It'll be
Yeah,
cumulative.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it'll be
That makes
cumulative, so I see what you mean. That's what I was
Yeah, so
thinking.
change the
So we
URI,
just-
change the
right.
hard.
and
Yeah,
when you
you
use
said-
a time period, then you normalize or you eliminate the up and down over a certain period.
Right,
So
right.
she's saying instead of Thursday or Monday morning, making a decision and saying, okay, we're at 110. So anything that comes in this week, she's saying normalize it by using a time period of, I mean, I guess it could be any time period. It could be a week, could be 2 weeks.
So, for me, I'm looking at my shelter right now. So say, I use money, we get to 100%. So we're talking about a time frame and say, okay, the time starts now. We have a range of 5 days. Whatever it might be, something, let's just say 5 days. 5 days, it's at 100%. We have from here to just gather our resources, look at our list, identify, but we're not gonna make any decisions Tuesday. We're not gonna make any decisions Wednesday. We're gonna look, whatever that time frame is, it may be 3 days, it may be 5, it depends. And during that time, yes, another animal may come in. 2 other animals may come in. 5 other animals may come in. Once we hit 100, that's when the time starts. And once we get to that time frame, then we look at what percentage we're at. And that's the list that we're going to pull from, because on day 5, we may still be at 100%. So, or day 5, we may be at 120. So we'll just pull out the 120 diagram instead of.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Like we need a time
Yeah.
frame once we hit 100.
I just didn't clarify it.
No, that.
No, I was like, I don't understand.
So,
And that's why I try to talk through it, 'cause I saw it the way you did. So maybe instead of days, would it help to say hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, or would you rather stick with days?
Usually once we hit 100%,
How do you-
it'll ebb and flow with some adoptions,
Okay.
some coming in, we'll make a little space, we'll get some things going. We're moving and shaking, but I think we don't want to wait too long,
Right.
because then we're gonna have to make, it's gonna reach.
Is 3 days a
3
good
days
number
is a
to
good
land
one,
on?
and we can always revisit this and see how it worked out and maybe make a change to that. Now, and that also means that we're not immediately stampeding to 100%, making some decisions
Right.
on Monday, which gives us the opportunity to save a few more lives.
We need to change the harbor positive and size untreated to poor grade also.
Yeah, that, everything's got to be changed.
No, so the non-italicized is from the previous level.
I know.
So this
But-
is the
but
previous.
Because
still
the
better.
wording has been changed.
Yeah, yes, I changed it. So it has the poor
But
grade
then
and
in here, the next slide has
At
that as well.
110, make that 4. Instead of untreated, just do rosemary.
Oh, you mean the ones that are currently in care?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have not been treated.
All that is being.
what,
Oh, so you're talking about 100, so we're at 100%, now we're at 110.
Mhm.
The ones that we currently have in care
So they
that we have not treated.
Right, but if it's
That
a
are poor.
good candidate, you don't want.
So I would just
That's
say
what y'all want to
poor
change,
grade
you
on
can change.
that.
Whatever works for you guys.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so instead of being treated or untreated or anything like that, it's just poor grade across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we can treat it, we treat it.
Yeah, exactly.
I got you. Okay. Sorry, I did not see that.
Does this look for
Is
everyone?
that it for this one? Any other thoughts or discussion on this slide?
Should we do something like at 110 capacity over 3 days or over do a time?
That's the timeframe
That's what-
we're
yeah, that's what
gonna,
we
we
can
can
that's what I'm saying.
implement.
Do we want to actually put that in there or?
So like this, at 100.
But I would, yeah,
Yeah, something like
Well,
that.
but then it's gonna be rolling 3 days, so you're
Yeah.
at 110, you get another thing.
You're gonna add a 3 days,
115, and now
6,
when is
9.
that 3 days?
I really have to,
Yeah, it's.
I just say,
You're
Yeah,
gonna
we
wanna
can't
follow
put-
all these rules, because as try as you will, you won't be able.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
I
good.
understand, yeah.
I think it's too specific.
Yeah, I think.
no,
we
I
just-
don't think the days really,
Yeah, I
don't
think
know
if-
that
once
we're
we
thinking
hit
about it
100,
enough, but-
so
We
if-
just examine.
Yeah, 'cause
in
it's a rolling- it's a
manufacturing,
rolling
if
program.
I'm building a product and I have great quality one day, and then, and let's say somebody's coming to look that one day, and we do everything we can to make it look perfect that one day. I can get those numbers low, high, whatever they need to be. I can manipulate those numbers, and that is the reason you normalize metrics and you have rolling metrics and things. So I really think if we're going to put numbers, I personally feel like you need, like, just putting 3 days up there is not any different than just saying, okay, today I feel like making a change.
Well, and see,
It needs to be a rolling something or other, a metric, a number that you're going to watch that is normalized by things like average length of stay or, something. Because otherwise you're comparing, you may not be comparing things similarly on different days.
well, and also because the numbers are going to change, well, not are, they have the potential to change so drastically from day to day, week to week, month to month. It's hard to normalize that. And it's funny you mentioned manufacturing. I worked the last 6 years in manufacturing. So if I look at it from that perspective, these are, as we've been at, recommendations, right? I'm putting my trust in you and your staff to say, okay, today I'm at 100%, guys, we're going to look at these cases because you've been monitoring them the whole time. You're not just coming in one day going, oh, we're 100%. I'm going to find this one and this one. You could probably tell me right now the care and needs of everything in that shelter. So to me, this is just us approving a recommendation for the conditions that exist today. Today. I personally don't want to, it is a huge concern. How could we increase capacity? But today, trying to decide what might be best that we may get approved for budgeting in 6 months does not help you today. And that's the way I'm looking at it. So it is hard to apply numbers to it. A new shelter, a new building, that might come next year, 2 years, next month, 6 months. I don't know that. I haven't heard that you have that answer. So today, these recommendations, as we talk through them, I feel will help you and your staff continue the quality of care that you've been providing.
But I think when she was talking about applying a number,
Oh, yeah.
that, unless you have something else with that number.
Yeah.
It's not as meaningful.
Correct. Yeah, that was, yes, I understood that from a message. I did. And I don't know what that would be. I can't recommend that, or I don't feel comfortable recommending that.
Right. And perhaps instead of having having rolling on each one of these days, because as you add days to each of these, the severity increases anyway. So you're adding a range to something that's
Correct.
getting worse.
Yeah.
Or if we just say at the beginning, we start at this range, because at the end of that range, we're based upon what we've already added at the beginning, the 75%, the non-residents and all those things, we should already be reducing our capacity. So by
Yes,
the time
we
we
should
get
be.
to that point, we may not even have to do anything.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or if we do have to do something, we probably nudged up and down, like you said, normalized. We hit 110, we got down to 100 day 2, but suddenly it was 120. Someone brought a few animals back. So by the end of that range, we're at 130. Now we're going to make choices on 130 to get to 100% or below. And then everything starts fresh. We're back to the beginning. We're back to
Maybe we don't do it at 110, maybe we do it at 120, instead of having all these little mini
Yeah.
tiers.
Okay.
Have bigger, have three tiers.
Okay.
We're at
Three tiers.
100, we're at
20 or
125 and 150.
So
Instead of doing three.
So do you want to eliminate 110 and just
Yeah.
go from 100 to 125?
Yeah, I like
Okay.
that.
Other thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's what I said, 120, yeah, there's too many. We need to have big tiers,
So
5 tiers.
in
will
here,
drive
we
me
have
crazy.
110,
It's like,
125.
Okay, we're at
and
3, no, we're at 500.
Could we take out 110 and go to 125?
Yeah, I say 110,
Yeah, that's what
125 and 150, I mean, that's.
She's saying
125, 150. A lot easier for you.
Agreed, because even with my
Yeah.
example of
Yeah,
50,
125 and 50.
Yeah, 125, 150, I mean, that way you're not. Well, we're hoping maybe at 100 and we're trying it for like 6 months.
Yeah.
We might not be dealing with the 125s in the winter.
We can
always
We might
come
have
back,
enough stop
bring you
gaps
back
in there,
some
but-
metrics and let you know how it
So
went.
so here's the recommended up for discussion 125. copied over the poor grade heartworm.
What else were you adding at all these
You changed heartworm positive to,
Stray.
or
Right, what's the difference between focal and systemic when you learn education?
focal, you got
I just know I get the dots on occasion.
systemic, you ran into the poison ivy
Yeah.
face first and everything, as opposed to you kind of got a little,
Okay.
yeah.
Just on your arm.
yeah.
And the difference between behavior 3 and 4. Significant enough to-
Yes. Behavior 4 means that they are now in a defensive posture of acting out on their fear or their anxiety to where they are not running away from the danger. Now they're going towards the danger to defend themselves. And in so doing, they are either giving physical cues that they're about to attack, fight, or defend themselves. That's usually the 4. 5, they've already done it. 5 is the one that you just snatched your hand back. And a three is where their anxiety level is so high that they are avoiding the danger, but they're giving you signs that they have reached a capacity to handle it. They start to shut down. It's the dog that you see that goes on their side and just shivers and shakes and isn't moving, and they've been like that for weeks. You can't bring them out of their kennel, and they do that every time you try to reach for them, as opposed to them going forward saying, stay away. They're just kind of doing that. So this is, these are for the dogs where they've not had good human contact. And it's been to such a point that behaviorally, they can be a danger if they get to a stressful
3
environment.
only applies to cats.
The 3/4 cats that are strays.
Yes, cats,
But in care and.
Right.
In cares
Is at 4.
4.
When we're at 100% capacity with a behavioral 4, and the animals are still at a behavioral 4, 125, then that's when further discussion of little Toby should be considered,
Yes.
right? Not at 100% with behavioral 4. That the time frame then for the behavioral goes through
to that,
125.
exactly. So
Am I
we're still,
reading all it? Am I-
yes. So
Is
we're at that
making
time
sense?
frame up here, like you said, Toby has kind of been bearing the teeth
Yeah.
or not very
Okay.
happy. But we have this time frame.
Okay,
But
that
we-
time-
but even before that time frame, we're still going to be assessing and trying
Right,
to work through that.
Right, I just needed clarity.
Right on the URI, I would like to add after 14 days, and you don't have to add with no shot sign of improvement. There's URI 14 days, period.
Okay.
And no, at 125%.
Any other suggestions or discussion for this?
Do I want to jump to 150 and then vote on both, or vote on?
Yeah, let's go look at that.
Yeah, we're on a roll now.
I think it's one, is there 140 in?
So we're
Here's
going to
one.
171.
You're gonna have to
What-
give
yeah,
us
let's do
another
that.
deal.
Yeah, we won't vote on it, so it won't
Yeah.
move through. It was just a motion, it's up for discussion.
Under behavior, I had a golden retriever that required constant behavior medicine. Why should that be unequal to a behavior number 4? See what I mean?
if they're on medication.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
heavy medication through Dr. Howe
Yes.
spent a fortune. And, yeah, and why would that be equal to a behavior 4? Equal to a dog requiring behavior modification medicine? See, that should not be as strong as behavior 4. Do you not agree, or do you agree?
The ones with behavior modification are going to be ones that are displaying behavior for that we've already started behavior modification drugs on, and they're doing better. They may not be doing well, but
Right.
it's dialed down more what we're able to
Right.
work with them, but they've been here for a while, and they're still having that problem. With the behavior modification drugs, what I found with people who are adopting, if you're not very aware that that's the type of dog
Oh,
you
I see
have,
what you mean. in
they're gonna
this
stop
case.
giving the medication.
Right,
or
because
forget.
it's so expensive and
Yes.
so, okay.
Like I give,
I misunderstood,
Yeah.
okay.
so we have some dogs
I'm
that are
so
on twice
sorry.
a day. and
Yeah,
When they adopt, they're going, he's fine today, and then they stop giving
yeah,
it.
right, and then I apologize, I'm
Oh, no.
sorry, I missed.
No, you
No,
like
Yeah.
questions.
That's good
Yeah,
clarification.
but sometimes I,
Well, no, that is clarification. I'm glad you asked, because I was looking at, and,
Yeah.
I mean, I personally now, my newest dog, she's 2, and she's on an anxiety
Yeah.
medication, so I knew where you were going with that.
yeah,
But if
Yeah.
somebody got her, which I would never give her up, and they stopped giving it to her,
Yeah.
you would think she was like. a
yeah, see,
3.
yeah,
She
Exactly.
gets into that falling over. She's
Yeah.
never been a 4, but she hovers between 2 and 3 without it. So that's a good point.
yeah, and
So is
see
that-
how, Dr.
It-
Howe would,
Explaining it is good.
yeah, Dr. Howe would never allow me to take the medication until we reacted together, bringing her down with training to maybe a 3.
Mhm.
But she still gave me medication because she would know that I continued. So thank you guys for
Absolutely.
My dog is
understanding.
the medication.
Yes.
Back up
I
the
want
seniors.
Yeah, I
So
feel
Okay.
that.
I appreciate it.
The seniors removed from both sides, and then the one pet household.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I know what you're
this
saying,
one
but-
pet household that they won't interact with other animals, other their kind. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's more that they're reacting to other animals.
So we require the animals that they're adopting. to be their own animals.
That makes
That's a good question.
I don't know what that
So
means.
our thought process behind that recommendation was that whenever we have, say, a dog and we tell folks, they don't do well with other
They
animals.
need
So
to be
they really do better, and as a one single pet, but we tend to hold on to those.
For a very long time,
Right.
because they don't.
It's more challenging to find a good fit for them because they cannot be brought into a multi-pet house.
And people, and,
Yeah, the cat shouldn't be in the same thing, though. I mean,
It can-
one thing with
like,
the
that's
dogs
your
is the
decision.
ones that have.
That's
So I
really
think the
Yeah,
cats
it's a good
should
point.
go out there.
So take it out.
Usually cats are loners, they like to.
Sorry.
We taking it out.
What is the consensus? Leave it in or?
But isn't it a behavior, doesn't that come back to behavior?
That, no,
If
that's
they're,
more behavior directed at people and, the kids or, we're unable to get the cat out of the cage because it's
But if
swatting.
we're saying one pet household, we're saying that it fights with other animals or something, it cannot be in a house. So it has nothing to do with the people, right? Just.
Right, that's
other-
more.
Just the animal
Right.
behavior.
Yeah, but I know there are a lot of cats that are like
Yeah.
household cats that are perfectly lovely.
Okay.
You know,
We can take that.
So consensus is take it out.
and we don't know what happens after people take any of our animals.
Yeah. Unless they don't want to share.
What about the dog one too?
Now, that one I have found that immediately after telling people for half an hour that this is the only animal they can't be around other this. They immediately come back because their friend brought a dog over, or they already have an animal that they can tell us about. Or they got another pet. And that doesn't do well with dogs, because dogs are generally more social creatures. That people, I have a dog, bring a dog over, and Don't bring a cat over. Bring your household. Remember, this is at 150. This is not at 100. This is not at 125. This is, we have, our total number, we're half above that. That's these are the distinctions that we're making. But this is also after we have worked with this animal, we tried behavior modification, social introductions that we're working on as well with other animals. So it's not that we just left them in their cage to kind of circle. We'll be working with these to get them to where they can be with some households. We usually put a sign up that says "Only Child." And keep that up there. And it's for those people who just want an animal and aren't taking it to the dog park. And once we get to 150 plus, we have to consider how whether they're adopted or not. Now, the dog reactive part, that or the reactive part, that is to those things, being reactive to other animals.
It makes me really uneasy. Just for a healthy dog, like maybe take it off and then in a couple months that working and always have it back on.
Add it back on. Add it back on like when.
No, I'm hoping once we do the 100, that we really don't have to
We
really
don't have
worry
to
about
worry
these
about
other two. And actually, I'd sort of like to put a vote that we try 100 for 3 months before we implement the 125. I'm fine with the 125 and 150 if the 100 is up.
Well, that's,
Yes.
so that's the only way that we would get to it, is
Yeah,
just
Is,
right, right.
is if we, yeah,
not working, so that.
is to
Well,
have.
that's what I
it.
said, give a trial period at the 100 just to see how it works. And then if it's not working, then obviously we need to have the next.
That's the one thing, if somebody asks if sugar limit gets down to healthy dogs, I think that's the one thing that somebody in the public can have to say.
Say that.
We can take that out.
Yeah.
Just take it out.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Or I say the same.
Yeah, no, at this point, at 150, you don't want anybody.
Yeah, I think it's a direction based.
Yeah, it should, yeah.
Yeah, you're just gonna have a whole thing infected.
Since we took out the section about the documents, we also want to the sleepover. Just want to make sure everything
These-
aligns with kind of what your thought process was.
I have some experience with aggressive behavior.
Because it's aggressive or destructive behavior, so destructive.
No, no,
physical surroundings.
Like they've already.
That's what it says, so I want to make sure.
And so we're saying here 3 times.
Yeah.
Well,
Is that what that means?
three
No, a
plus.
puppy's not gonna be a
No,
3.
And it's not that, and
Yeah.
we always
Yeah,
investigate
it has to be a
because
three
we're
plus.
talking about
Yeah.
the
Grade of behavior.
grade of behavior.
So there's one bullet below that says destructive to physical surroundings.
They tore a wall through my drywall. They eat through my door, things like that where I can't keep them in a cage.
But it's not a puppy chewing up.
No,
No.
never.
Well, but then you need to put something on.
Okay,
that,
I see what you're
it
saying.
needs
Yeah,
to
let's
be more
clarify.
specific. It needs to be more specific.
More
yeah.
specific to an adult dog that already, that.
Yeah, and I feel
With
like I
identified anxiety. Yeah, and that's not a.
I've had a golden retriever that didn't mature from chewing until like 3 years old.
Oh,
or
yeah.
So
Yeah.
in year 2, he would have been,
But
wouldn't have wanted it.
But
So
there-
we're,
there
well,
are
we're
certain-
talking about it 150%.
Yeah, this
capacity.
is-
So we've been observing that dog for
For a
at least a
long
couple of
time.
weeks. I'm thinking if it moved up from a behavior 2 to a 3 to a 4, it went on multiple sleepovers. I mean, I'm seeing many people, more to it than just this descriptor.
We have factual evidence. of
Yeah, you're gonna
behavior
have
that's consistent.
documentation on it, so I'm good with it the way it is because of that.
And we always take into consideration what they were destroying, like, I never had a left shoe when I had my dog. And brand new shoe's gone, but that wasn't, but we're talking like extreme destruction.
But think about the general public looking at this and reading what we've approved. So,
So do you want to leave it, the first bullet point where it's sleepover fails 3 times?
For
well, I
aggressive
think it's
behavior.
a grade 3 is what he's saying it is. The grade 3 aggression is
Oh,
that?
no, that's not great.
Oh, it's
That's
3 times.
three
Like they've gone,
sleepover
they attacked the dog, they left, they were destructive, they came back,
Yeah.
tried, we'll work trying to find the right one.
I would take out the destructive and physical.
Isn't that the only
That's a
difference?
double, almost a double negative.
Yeah, I would take that out.
Okay,
Yeah.
Is it good enough that we would have a motion
Oh,
to?
offer.
Y'all have the
So we're
125
doing both.
device.
Okay, so I'll move that we put to a vote accepting the 125 and 150%. I second that.
It's not- no one basis, it's not subject to- which I hope staff.
Okay, so then we would have, we'll have a vote by a show of hands so that Dawn can record the yeses and nos for this. So if all those in favor, raise your hand.
Okay.
All those opposed? So motion passes by a vote of 8 in favor and 2 against.
Wait, she's got an announcer item. We'll go quick, so we'll.
yeah.
Okay, so now we will move on to number 3, workshop item B, review and discussion on procedures and policies.
Oh, wait, no.
No, next one.
Yes.
Okay, now we will move on to item number 4, workshop item A. Review and discussion of animal shelter updates. Don checks.
Good. Okay,
Should just do the presentation at the bottom,
oh, there we go.
and then you'll be able to do arrows.
Current shelter population, right now, we have a total of 44 dogs, 9 cats, and 1 very happy rabbit. That's a total of 54. To add to that, we also have 21 animals in foster. That's 2 dogs and 19 cats. And we've expanded our foster family to 9 families. So we have, now that we've opened it up to the public, some kittens come in and the same day they're headed out the door. So that's awesome and outstanding. Really excited about that. A lot of people that come in want to foster. And so we provide everything that they need and reach out to them and keep all of that going. Sorry. Events. We are still doing the PetSmart events. First of the month, we will be doing the one at Wolfgang Bakery as well. So those are some things that we're doing, and we're looking at other events to be working at Constellation Field with some of their events. I've reached out to their event coordinator as well. Anytime they have animals there, I feel like we should have animals there. So I am constantly.
Those are 2 dates in May, right? The
Exactly.
9th and
And
the
so
20th.
I'm seeing if we can get permission to set up
Yeah.
something and parade our animals through there as well. Utopia Press newsletter. Each of you should have one. This is our first edition, our first one. So we will be adding more to it. We like to add updates, things that are going on with it. Our foster program, Whiskerville reopening, any special adoptions that are going on. Yappy Hour, which is a celebration of our volunteers, which I'll go into, I think, in the next slide. And PetSmart, where we just kind of talk about PetSmart and where we are. And this is something we'll send out to all of the volunteers to keep a line of communication open about what's going on in the shelter as well. And any particular updates that we need to give them any information on, any changes, and just the main policies and procedures and things like that. Doggy daycare and larger play groups. Something that I implemented this month as well is instead of just having a pair of dogs that are able to play together, I wanted to get them used to being ready to go play at the dog park and to be used to different personalities, different sizes, different animals. So we've instituted doggy daycare where up to 5 or 6 dogs can play in the same yard at the same time. So they can run their energy down and just be free and be happy. It's been very successful so far. We're working on ways so that more and more of the dogs that don't have friends to play with are part of that daycare, even if their participation in the daycare is that they just have to sit with me and watch what happens until they learn some manners and things like that and get them used to being in different social situations.
Sorry, does this go out, like, if you would like to make a recommendation or try a play group, let a staff member know, so is this meant, who's the audience? Is this meant to be
The volunteers. Yes, and the dog walkers, and even just people who are like, I think they'd be great together, and we give it a shot, and we try to socially introduce them appropriately to make it successful. And a lot of the suggestions on the play groups come from the volunteers as well. Whiskerville is officially open. We do have cats available for adoption in Whiskerville. And so far, we've had 2 or 3 sleepovers that have happened as well. We're still putting them in PetSmart. We're also trying to increase our numbers in Whiskerville as well for our adoptable cats. So we're slowly adding to that space. We've also created in that area a multi-cat room where you can house 6 or more animals and just a beautiful, wonderful castle-like area where they all have their own little sleeping area in that room. So that should be fun to watch. Updates on toys and signage. We've had some dogs that have had some issues with chewing a lot of the toys, the soft toys. So we've updated some signage to let everyone know, staff, volunteers, people looking at the animals, that they have chewed up a toy or they ingested one, and that we need to monitor them for at least a week. Sometimes if that does occur, we do take them and put them in a quieter space where they can calm down, so that we can also observe when they move it out, so we can make sure that there's no intestinal problems or anything like that, and then we'll bring them back and put them back in the rotation. They still get enriched, just kind of keep them in a more less stressful area, so we can work on that. Yappy Hour is Friday at the end of this month, April 29th at 6 p.m. For volunteers who have made above a certain number of hours. We'll be celebrating our volunteers who have made this place very special, have welcomed me, have helped me with a lot of suggestions, and it really helped make a lot of these animals adoptable by working with them behaviorally and taking care of them. Many of the animals know them way better than they know me, and they're super excited when they see the volunteers. So we want to celebrate them on Friday as well.
And y'all are invited to attend as well.
Absolutely.
Go on, we'll send
Pizza, there'll be prizes. all kinds of stuff.
It's a city facility.
Our website updates. We're actively updating our website to bring it in line with a lot of new changes that were happening, updating the information that's available to everyone, things that we're trying to push out messaging, make it more friendly for people who are looking for information on there as well. We're looking to add a feed on there where we can post videos of the animals, post them playing. We're in talks with our media department and possibly creating like a play yard cam or a kitten cam where people can tune in and watch the animals play. I think that would be great as far as getting them adopted, being able to say, I wonder what's going on in the playground today, or how are these cute kittens doing? I'm at lunch and I did something to cheer me up, and something that people can do to kind of engage them and bring them to the website as well. Staffing updates, we're fully staffed on our animal control officers at this point in time. We do have an opening for a part-time kennel tech, and we also have put in an opening for a part-time receptionist as well, which will free up some of our staff to be able to do some more specific things in their jobs as well. Questions?
Now we will move on to item number. Five.
Workshop
I thought we were skipping five.
five people.
We're skipping five.
Yeah. Time, we don't have time.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's over 2.
So then,
Do we need a motion to table? I think we need a motion to table.
okay, so
What are we taking?
The other agenda item that we don't have time to get to.
Dawn had a workshop.
So workshop B.
Item B, which was, discussion about the new shelter.
Yeah, it was gonna give an update on the shelter and options, so we need to table that for the May meeting.
But we
Unless
don't
y'all wanna
have
stay
enough
here for
time.
another hour.
Next time.
Do what?
Next time.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
if that's, so we need a motion to
So
table.
I move that we table item 5B till the May.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. And so now we'll move on to item 6, director's report for 5. Is that, are we, is it 6? 6,
So,
director's
I know,
report,
it's,
item A.
the agenda's so weird. 6A, I think is what it is. So
Okay.
you already gave, John already gave the Whiskerville updates, so I'm not gonna go there. Subcommittees, so what we were wanting to get kind of a quick idea from y'all is, do we want to, because in the past, if you've been on the board, we've had subcommittees that talked about topics and thoroughly discussed them to then bring back to the board for consideration. Do we want to create that to kind of speed up some of the work that's coming down, like looking at how we spend donation funds, like having a subcommittee discuss that, bringing it forward so that it's less, I don't want to say less discussion, but it's kind of vetted prior to coming to the full board to streamline the process and get things done quicker. Would y'all be open to that if we came back with some topics that could be created and handled within subcommittees?
I think
Yes.
that worked very well for the shelter donation discussions and plan for the shelter. So we found that to work well.
So if y'all open that on the next meeting, we'll come back with, here's some options for subcommittees and who would handle what. And then we could see who wants to be on which committees. They have to stay under a quorum, but we can talk about that at that time. And then review of concerns. So we did have a social media post that went out that we did a video, as y'all know, of John walking through Whiskerville, promoting the changes and the renovations that were happening in Whiskerville. So just to be transparent and open, so No Kill Sugarland took our post and then commented about the cats and the treatment of cats. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of that post because not everyone's on social media. So again, just keeping that transparent. I don't know if y'all can read it or want me to read it to you. It's just so you know. And that, I believe, is all upcoming. So we'll continue the discussion. Next time, we'll talk about the item that we tabled, which I think will take up the majority of the time next time, because it will be a lengthy conversation, and then we'll talk about the subcommittees.
Can we add, see, since it'll be a month later, how the 100% program is working, not working. So just a brief discussion, and then that should be a 2 hour. Let us know. Let us know if it's helping.
Doesn't
anyway.
I'll come with a report of kind of what we did, what decisions we made.
Yeah, we could do that in his report
Yeah.
each time, like update y'all on the progress and.
Did we previously table? Vote for mandatory?
That's something that can be like talked about embedded under the subcommittee, and then all of those come back as a discussion point.
And I don't know if there were methods or whatever that somebody was researching on that.
Well, to that, we put some data that we can pull together. We just didn't include it in this meeting because, and you were right.
Yeah.
This was a pretty lengthy discussion, so it just.
I just didn't want it to fall through the cracks.
Oh, yes, no, there's a lot of topics that we're getting data and costs and everything associated to them right back.
Then do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting today. So,